The following is a presentation of Project Independence and WCWP. Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead.
Welcome to Project Independence and You.
Good morning and welcome to Community Talk Radio. This is Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host and producer, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host today, Otto Los and Paula Ewell. Paul and I work together at the town of North Hempstead's Department of Services for the Aging, where Paul is the Deputy Commissioner and I'm the Director of Senior Citizen Affairs. And of course, Otto should be on the staff at this point, volunteer, PI ambassador, supporter, friend, and all around aspirational guy, I try to think of a new adjective. That's exactly why we keep Otto around. But this morning we are talking to Penny Stern, Dr. Penny Stern, who is the Chief Preventative and Lifestyle Medicine at Northwell Health Katz Institute for Women's Health. And we're talking about a very important topic near and dear to all of our hearts, I think, is stress reduction in the new year. It's certainly, I think, this month in particular, January, it seems to be so many people I know are just really feeling January. It's been cold. Everyone's kind of stressed out, I feel. So now is a perfect time to have Dr. Stern on with us. Welcome, Dr. Stern.
Thank you for having me.
So we're hoping, Dr. Stern, you will cure us of all of our stress and anxiety and worry and let us get into the weekend with some tools for our toolbox.
Well, I want to just say one thing as a disclaimer. Most of us know what it's like to feel overwhelmed at times in January or any other time of the year, but managing stress is not a one-size-fits-all proposition. So everyone should take from my comments what you believe will work for you personally, and not just because somebody is saying it. I don't want people to get the wrong idea.
Absolutely. But we're just, that's what it's all about, educating people and letting them, as we say, throw whatever they think is good for their toolbox, put it in that toolbox. So let's just start from the basics. What is stress in general, and how does it affect your body?
Well, if you look up stress in the dictionary, they define it as a physical, chemical, or emotional factor that causes bodily or mental tensions, and may be a factor in disease causation, which is accurate. But most people don't know where the word actually came from. There was an Austro-Canadian endocrinologist named Hans Selye, who almost 100 years ago now performed a number of experiments on laboratory animals. And what he did was he subjected them to things like blaring lights and deafening noises and extremes of hot and cold, perpetual frustration, all kinds of different noxious physical and emotional stimuli. And he found that those stimuli caused pathologic changes like stomach ulcerations or enlargement of the adrenal glands. And he later demonstrated that these animals developed diseases similar to those seen in humans, like heart attacks, strokes, kidney disease, and others. So it was Selye who gets the credit for creating the concept of stress as something physiological. And his theories got a lot of attention, and then the word stress quickly became a popular buzzword, which pretty much ignored what his original definition was by using the word stress to refer to all sorts of reactions. And eventually, actually, somebody wrote in the British Medical Journal a number of years ago that now stress, in addition to being itself, was also the cause of itself and the result of itself, which made people laugh, but it was true.
Oh, it's interesting you use the word sound. A person like me who wears hearing aids, stress can be I can hear pretty good with the hearing aids, but certain environments, it becomes, if you will, more stressful.
Stressful, yeah.
Because you can't really catch everything. And then there was other situations where things are so loud that I think it creates stress for everybody. Yet
that stress sound is definitely, in the extreme, is considered a noxious stimulus. So, even without hearing aids, just in general, if you want to torture somebody, you can do it with sound. So, he was just the first person to basically look at these sorts of things and see, using animals, unfortunately, what the effect was. And a lot of what we know today is thanks to him.
Well, stress always gets a negative tone to it, but my understanding is that there is good and bad stress.
Yeah.
Use-
Not all stress stems from something bad, good stress, if you will. It lets you react to danger, like jumping out of the path of a car or pulling someone from a burning building. Good stress can be things like winning the lottery or getting into college or getting married, or, I mean, you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And
So
in
not
your
all stress is
body
bad.
works like the same in that, like if it's good stress or bad stress, is your body like, reacting exactly in the same kind of manner?
Well, it depends on how long it goes on for, but physiologic stress is stress. Um, Not that I think we should feel sorry for people who win the lottery, but things that are stressful, and there are physiologic responses that we go through. But personally, I'd rather have the good stress than the bad stress.
Does your body actually know the difference between good and bad stress? Or are they all, the, does the
It's an
body react the same way no
interesting
matter?
question. Interesting question. I would think there are probably other chemicals that are being released when something good is happening, um, which might mitigate some of the effect, but there's good stress and bad stress. We tend to think of stress as a negative.
Yeah. Is stress sometimes unconscious? Like you're not aware that you're being stressed in some situations, but you may be?
I don't know that I can answer that because I'm going to talk about this in a bit, but there are signs of stress. So even if you may not be, as you're saying, consciously aware of it, there may be things that are going on that reveal that there's stress. And sometimes people ignore symptoms,
Yeah. Yeah.
not only relating to stress, but other
Yeah.
things as well.
No, I have a Fitbit on my wrist and it
So do
has,
I.
which is supposed to tell you, are you under stress or not? And I
Oh,
just, wonder how
yeah,
really,
mechanical devices. I mean, I wear mine for the purpose of steps. That's all I care about. But you shouldn't take these devices as gospel, really, um, because they sometimes estimate things wrong in terms of people's sleep and whatnot. So I wouldn't pay that much attention, but it will be accurate when it comes to steps.
yeah, right. Okay. Well, I use it for that mainly,
Yeah.
but
I think that's everyone use it mainly for this.
Yes,
which
so do we
relieves.
all. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, obviously, and I think in society we're always all, saying I'm stressed out and this, and I was looking through your notes and like how common is stress? Is that just every single person out there? What is?
Well, if you believe survey data, and you can take survey data with a grain of salt, but 3 out of 4 people say they experience stress at least twice a month. And of those
That seems
people who
low.
experience stress, over half of them say they suffer from high levels of
Pretty good.
stress. And
Oh,
I remember thinking if they're only having stress twice a month, I mean, I personally wouldn't complain, but
right.
that's what the survey data tells us.
Interesting.
So
But maybe
it
goes
may be
down.
that we talk about stress a lot, but it may be that people are not quite as stressed as they think they are, or they're just not recognizing stress for what it is.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think is, because I even know about my own self a lot of times, you're kind of just going along with whatever the task is or the motions, and you're not consciously, kind of what Paul was saying,
Yeah.
aware that, you're kind of stressed because you just have to do it,
Right. And sometimes another emotion, like
Yeah,
it can be
right.
anger, but you say, I'm so stressed out. But
Yeah.
there's something else
Yeah.
that maybe you ought to get to figuring out.
Well, not long ago, they've heard this story on this show about getting involved with a new TV, and then the following week getting involved with converting to fiber optic, and now adapting to that completely. And I'm pretty technically up to speed, but that whole period of time, the learning curve, and frankly, I thought stress of of figuring out how to work this thing. What kind of stress would you classify that as?
No, I kind of liken it to what people experienced back in the day when VCRs came out and people wanted to throw the VCRs out the window because they couldn't figure out how to make the thing stop blinking zero and all this other stuff. I mean, I think mechanical devices, whether they're electronic or otherwise, can be, cause stress to us, especially when we're in that, as you put it, learning curve. Um, I always say have somebody around who knows how to work these things, and then it's like finding a kid to work with computers because
No, it's
what we
definitely.
think what we think of is complicated. They're like, what? It's easy.
No, because my mom, Otto, I was just having a conversation with her yesterday because, she did an update on her cell phone, and she was a very tech savvy woman, and she felt so frustrated because now everything was in some like new place and you couldn't
Yeah,
find, and I was
yeah,
thinking it's so hard for seniors, who
yeah.
are not tech savvy at all, and
Not
this is.
even so many seniors. Let me tell you, every time there's a computer update at work, and
Mhm.
these are young people, these are not seniors. People go crazy trying to like, wait a minute, what did they do? It's not here. What happened to it? Where did it go? And they have to call the help desk to get
Yeah,
help.
and I think we're
So
just so in a society where everything's constantly being updated and changed. Because my mom was like, nothing was wrong with my phone. Why do
right,
they
right.
need to do this whole update,
Well,
for
the,
what?
the contradiction to that is that one of the things they say you should do as you get older is learn new things.
Yeah.
Well,
Now, that's a whole other topic. We can
but,
talk about that some other time. That the brain thrives on new things. I'm always telling people, when you go driving, get lost, take a wrong turn, see what
Yeah.
happens, make your brain work, but that's a whole other topic. This is America. We have gas stations and GPS and you can stop for directions, but people are terrified of getting lost, but it's great for the brain. Take a different route,
I'm
take a
going to tell
wrong
my
turn.
husband that that's what I've been doing all along, just
see,
training the
but
brain.
that's where technology has made getting lost less stressful.
Well, the problem I find with that is, I don't know whether you noticed that, but in the olden days, remember people used to open up a map and figure out where to
Yeah.
go?
I
Nobody
could,
knows how to use a map anymore. All they have is GPS. If GPS ever went
True.
away, people would be really lost. So,
It's very
everything is a double-edged sword.
so
well,
true.
that's an interesting topic. I used to,
Mhm.
in my business life, travel all over the country and had a file cabinet with two drawers full of maps and had street maps of cities.
Mhm.
It had overview maps of cities. And the negative of that is I would be driving with these maps on my
Right,
lap,
right.
trying to figure out how to get from point A to B. And
Well, then
some,
we advanced to MapQuest. You remember MapQuest, where you could go
Yeah.
online and it would print out your directions, and um, I
Yeah.
remember that.
That's
Well,
right. It's definitely all things that, could certainly add to stress, I think. So, I know there's all different, layers of stress and, in different types. So there's what are physical signs of stress that people can kind of be aware of or are kind of clued into?
well, there are people put their stress in different places.
Hmm.
Some people, when they're stressed, they develop severe headaches. Others have back pain or knee pain or pain almost anywhere else. Stiff necks, tight shoulders. That's what plagues some people. Rapid breathing is another sign of stress. Sweaty palms, sweating in general can be a sign of stress. Some people have persistent abdominal complaints, feeling that their stomach is upset or being nauseated or having diarrhea. Sleep disturbances often accompany stress, as almost everyone can attest to.
Yeah, we're all
S-
nodding our heads over here.
yes, some people feel terribly fatigued. Um, Suppression of the immune system, which is one of the important reasons to try to reduce persistent stress. When your immune system is suppressed, obviously you're more likely to catch anything that's going around, or when you get sick, to have a harder time recovering. Um, there's also mental stress. People who are under stress may find that they don't concentrate well, or they are making more errors than is usual for them, or they can't make decisions when normally they have no trouble doing that. Tempers can be short. People are easily frustrated by tasks situations that normally wouldn't make much of an impact on them. And then you have behavioral symptoms like yawning. Everybody knows that you yawn to get more oxygen to increase your alertness, but yawning excessively is often a sign of stress. Talking too fast, talking too loud may also be a sign of stress. Biting nails, everybody knows about biting nails. Grinding teeth. Teeth grinding is more common than you think. Drumming your fingers, who drum their fingers even after they're told, please stop drumming your fingers, and they keep doing it. Pacing, unless you're outside of a delivery room, pacing incessantly is a sign of behavioral stress. Normally people don't pace around. So there are a lot of signs.
Talking too fast, I'll
Wait.
have to talk to my granddaughter.
You're gonna have to
Uh,
hold that, Otto, because we're gonna take our first break. After the break, we will continue talking with Dr. Penny Stern, who is the Chief Preventative and Lifestyle Medicine at Northwell Health Katz Institute for Women's Health, all about stress reduction in the new year. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.
Take WCWP with you wherever you go with the WCWP app. Listen live 24/7 to all of our streams, all from one app. Plus, call the studios directly from the app and visit our social media. Download the app through the iOS App Store on Apple devices or the Google Play Store on Android by searching WCWP Radio, or visit WCWP.org for links. The WCWP app, available now on iOS and Android devices.
Welcome back to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host, Paula Ewell and Otto Los. We're going to jump right back in with Dr. Penny Stern, who is the Chief of Preventive and Lifestyle Medicine at Northwell Health Katz Institute for Women's Health, all about stress reduction in the new year. So, Otto, I will turn to you. I know you have
I do have a question, Dr. Stern. The Katz, the Women's Institute, or the Katz Institute for Women's Health, how would somebody go there? Like, would you be like somebody's primary doctor? How do you wind up in this facility or this place?
Well, there are a lot of people who are part of the Katz Institute. And if you go online to the Katz Institute's website at Northwell Health, you can find pretty much any kind of doctor you're looking for. I do preventive medicine, lifestyle medicine, but you name the profession, there is somebody for you there. The Katz Institute is primarily devoted to promoting the health of women, but I actually have had some men come to my practice because they're interested in lifestyle medicine. So even though it is for women, and find that many times historically women were not treated by physicians in the way that they really needed to be treated. A lot of ignoring symptoms in women, and it was decided more than a decade ago that women really need people who are invested in their health, and that's where the Katz Institute came from.
So a woman, you could frankly, look for your primary physician for.
You can find every specialty. If you go onto the website, you can see we have hundreds of people who are part of the Katz Institute. These are people who are interested in and engaged in caring for women. And it's not the same as obstetrics and gynecology. You shouldn't think it's just that. It's everything.
Okay.
Cardiology, endocrinology, neurology, every specialty.
Dr. Stern, would you come there before you're not feeling well with preventative medicine?
Most of the people I see are people who are referred to me because they've been seen by somebody else in the health system, and they need lifestyle behavioral changes. Lifestyle medicine is dedicated to promoting the kinds of lifestyle behaviors that will prevent or the onset of chronic disease, or at least delay the progression of chronic disease in people who already have chronic disease. So I see people who've gotten a diagnosis that they're upset about, they're not happy with, they've been cared for, they've been treated, and now they want to make changes in their life, for example. Some people, it's a matter of changing their diet. Some people, it's wanting to get involved in physical activity and they haven't been exercising and they want to start. Um, it runs the gamut, really. But I'm not
So
a primary care, so I'm not somebody who will see you when you have a sore throat.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that's not what I do. But there certainly are enough people. I mean, Northwell is a huge enterprise, and there are people doing general internal medicine, straight internal medicine, all the subspecialties of internal medicine, surgery, psychiatry, everything. So there is there is a place for everybody.
one of the things that I see, and I hear a lot of people talking about, is in order to change, you have habits that have to be changed. Maybe you ate wrong, you didn't do any physical activity, you know, you reacted certain ways or whatever. Would you get involved with working with people in terms of guiding them or giving
Yes,
them
of
a little
changing their
support
habits, you mean?
in
Well, it
terms of
depends. There are
changing
people,
them?
yeah, there are people who have certain kinds of habits where in order to change them, so to speak, I might suggest that they consider cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. That's not, doesn't involve medication. It involves a technique that basically changes the way people are thinking. It changes their habits. There's a special subset of it called CBTI. That's for people who have insomnia, for example. I don't do it. Most doctors don't do it. It's usually psychologists, social workers, and people who've been trained to do CBT, for example. But habits only become habits when you do them with enough frequency till they become a habit. So when you want to start something new, if you don't keep doing it, um, it doesn't become a habit and you slide back into whatever it was that you were doing before. People find that when they try to be on changing their dietary programs, um, you just slide back into eating the wrong things, and before you know it, all the weight that you lost came back. So the idea is to make permanent changes,
Right.
not temporary changes.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you really have to want to do this in order to,
Yeah.
I'm not too
Well,
sure you can change everybody's habits.
well, it depends what the habit is. I mean, one of the problems a lot of the people that I see have is sleep problems, and most of the problems relate to sleep hygiene. They've developed bad habits over time. You're not born with bad sleep habits. It's something that's acquired over time, and it is possible to change those habits. Um, Most people, at least ones that I see, really do want to make changes. They're motivated. And I think motivation is key. It's the same thing when people want to stop smoking. You can tell people from morning until night smoking is bad for you. We've known this since 1964 with the Surgeon General's report. And yet there are still people who take up smoking, who continue to smoke, who like smoking. And you can tell them it's terrible, it's the worst thing you can possibly do, and they still smoke. When somehow somebody gets motivated to stop, amazingly, they're able to quit. And it takes effort. The average smoker has 7 to 8 attempts before they can succeed. But you have to want to stop.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, I agree with you. I think self-motivation in general in life is pretty important. Nobody can make you do anything.
Yeah.
well, I
And I
think
think this is
that's pretty
also,
accurate.
yeah,
Yeah.
and this is in the same wheelhouse, of changing your habits and kind of stress management. In the first segment, we kind of talked about just what is stress, the signs of stress, and, now we're at the, how do we, kind of combat stress? So, what are some good tips that you have, Dr. Stern?
Well, believe it or not, and this is going to sound a little hokey, but you should take it seriously. It's important first and foremost to live with an attitude of gratitude. Most
Yeah.
of us take entirely for granted whatever we have that is good. We focus on the not so good. And many people have found that jotting down a few sentences each day about what you may have to be grateful for can be very, very helpful in crystallizing your thoughts around this idea of gratitude. Um, and I like to say there are like roughly 6 areas um, of things that we can do to help address both physical and mental stress. Those areas are self-management, time management, stressor management, change management, technology management, and leisure management. So when you talk about self-management, it can be challenging to manage your own stress. Well, what is self-management? It's the recognition that we need to effectively use the spaces in our lives and the resources that we have. It's the realization that time and life are finite, and it's up to us to be the captains of our own ship. Sleep, physical activity, nutrition, which are also pillars of lifestyle medicine, they form the basis of self-management. Like you talk about sleep, every person has different sleep needs, but everyone needs at the very least 6 hours. That's the bare minimum. I don't encourage 6 hours. I encourage 7 to 8 hours. The majority of Americans do not get enough sleep. So if we were going to just talk about sleep hygiene, that would take up the whole hour. But suffice it to say that at the very least, you should go to sleep and get up at the same time every day. And it's important not to go to sleep too late. And you can try tonight. Try to go to sleep within an hour of when you first start to feel tired. No electronics, no cell phones, no television in that hour. Because most people know that the light produced by these devices disrupts our sleep-wake cycles. Remember, we're not by nature nocturnal animals. We're hardwired to sleep when it gets dark and awaken with the dawn. That's how we are. We're not raccoons. We're not cats. We're supposed to sleep. And then we went and invented electric light. And that has done a number on our sleep habits. It allows us to stay up all night if you want to. But when you get enough sleep, you're in a much better position to deal with stress effectively. And as I said before, your immune system is really key, and sleep helps to keep your immune system, humming. Physical activity. I don't like to say exercise because that brings up people's ideas about, high school gym and wearing, bloomers and things, but physical activity, that's the key to reducing stress. It also helps promote good sleep, which is a nice side effect. But if you're able to walk 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and even if mobility is a problem, there are people who, for whatever reason, they can't do that. You still have to have physical activity. There's chair-based exercises like chair yoga, chair calisthenics, stretching, more, all kinds of things. Everyone needs to move. People feel good when they engage in physical activity because when you exercise, you produce endorphins, which you've probably heard of. These are chemicals that are like opioids that we produce. You've heard of runner's high. Well, these endorphins, these hormones are produced in the brain and the nervous system. And when they're released, you feel really, really good, which is why people who get involved with activity don't want to stop because they love those feelings. So I would say walking is probably something that I recommend more than anything else. It can be a great way to maintain, physical fitness. And all you need is a pair of comfortable shoes and the ability to be safely mobile. And some people feel that it's not safe to walk in the streets or the pavements aren't straight or they're afraid of falling. But you don't have to join a gym or purchase, expensive equipment to engage in activity. You can go to a mall and walk. The floors are clean there and they're smooth and there's no precipitation. You don't have to worry about potholes. Malls are great places as long as you don't take your credit card with you because then
Yes,
you'll
that
end
would
up.
be my problem, I think.
Yeah,
when it
well, that is something I tell people. If you're going to go walking in the mall, leave the
Go
credit card
early.
home. Yeah, well, go when you're not going to buy anything.
Right.
And the more you walk, the greater the benefit, and those benefits are significant. Walking
I
can
think
help
we're all
reduce
in
your
your
stress
camp here.
levels.
Yeah.
So I was
What?
walking.
Yeah,
What?
we're all walkers here.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
well,
three of us spend our stress
walking
relief.
relieves tension.
Yeah.
Walking relieves stress. And it also can elevate your mood because of the endorphin effect. Um, Supports the immune system. promotes good sleep. People who are routine exercisers sleep better because, we don't use our bodies enough. In the olden days, if you wanted to eat, you had to grow it or catch it. And so
Right.
people were tired. And we don't have to do that. You open the fridge and there it is. So you don't have to do anything. So people aren't really tired enough. So exercising really, really gives that to you. And people who are routine exercisers also have health benefits like cardiovascular health, better memory, better thinking, reduced risk for dementia. Everybody's afraid of dementia. Well, exercisers have much reduced risk of dementia, probably because you have better blood flow to the brain. And of course, if people are worried about their weight, people who are routine exercisers don't worry about their weight. And it also helps keep bones, and muscles strong. People who have high blood pressure or diabetes, walking can be very helpful. Um, and anything that people do to start moving is is worthwhile. It really is. And I think we fail to appreciate that. We think of it as a chore rather than a blessing. So I
Right.
think that's something that we should think about. When it comes to nutrition, um, most people know the drill. I mean, you know that your diet should be rich in fruits and vegetables and low in saturated fats. That's animal fats, low in sugar, low in salt, a balanced diet, avoiding junk food and processed food. That gives you the most nutritious bang for your buck. And that too is a topic you could spend easily an hour on. Um, when it comes to other ways to reduce stress, um, time management, most people don't realize that much of our stress actually comes from problems with time management. Having your time keep pace with your resources, that leads to effective time management. Getting organized, both in the way how you order your time and your home, um, setting goals, long-term goals, short-term goals. That helps people figure out what's important to them and or what's urgent for them versus less urgent. Um, for some people, using a daily planner, either paper or electronic, allows them to organize their schedule and create to-do lists. And the research shows that having to-do lists helps reduce stress because
Well,
it
I
lays
laugh,
out,
Dr. Stern, because
it's
we're
true.
always talking on the show about lists, and Otto and I are obsessed with writing lists. And
It's
I used to
true.
have to
It's
write
true.
it by hand because I like the idea of crossing it off.
Right. Checking it off it's that feeling of fulfillment. There was one study that I came across very recently that said you should write down three things before you go to bed that you need to do the next day. And that actually improves your sleep,
Mm,
which I thought was really fascinating. Just three things that it calms you rather
yeah.
than getting up and worrying about all the things you have to do.
Well,
I
I
like to
think of
say
like,
manage your time or it will manage you. So,
right, yeah,
you know,
right.
Well, I'm a believer in what you're talking about wholeheartedly. And I do believe occasionally you might look at this list and it gets pretty long. So you have to take some time with yourself to kind of regroup, think about your focus with your big long-term goals, and just take the time, as you say, to think about it. What do you want to do, and what's the most important to you
right,
in terms
right.
of your life and your lifestyle?
Yeah, well, I
It's
think
been shown actually that people who actually take the time to sketch out goals, whether they're short-term goals or long-term goals, it actually is good for the brain. I mean, I don't want to digress into my,
well, we're gonna
Alzheimer's
take
dementia talk, but
pause
it's
you right there,
actually
Dr.
it's
Stern.
actually good for the brain to do that. Having goals, people who wake up in the morning and they have quote unquote nothing to do, they
Yeah.
don't do well. They don't do well versus people who have a ton of things to do. They have too many things to do. They can't be worried about getting sick or dying because they have so many things to do that, they're never going to
Well,
die.
Dr. Stern, I'm going to
So
pause you right there because we are going to take another break. After the break, we'll continue talking with Dr. Penny Stern from the Northwell Health Katz Institute for Women's Health, all about stress reduction in the new year. You're listening to Project Independence in You on LIU Public Radio.
WCWP is your home for great music and great conversation. You'll find all that and more on WCWP.org. Listen live on the web, check out the lineup, subscribe to podcasts, and stay up to date on the latest station events. Get in touch with us and let us know if you like what you're hearing. And find out how you can support or get involved at the only community public radio station serving Nassau's North Shore. Plus, sign up to get a free bumper sticker. It's all online at WCWP.org.
Welcome back to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host today, Otto Los and Paula Yule. We're going to jump right back in with Dr. Penny Stern, who is the Chief of Preventive and Lifestyle Medicine at Northwell Health Katz Institute for Women's Health. And we're talking all about stress reduction in the new year and kind of building up your toolbox. And you should see my paper in front of me, Dr. Stern. I have all kinds of tips jotted on this that I'm definitely going to try and incorporate into this weekend, frankly.
Just a thought. All of the things we're talking about, I'm a huge believer in. And I also think that occasionally we need to jog our memory, like you talked about an attitude of gratitude.
Yeah.
To me, that's like linked to positive thinking, same idea.
Mhm.
And you every now and then have to kind of remind yourself, nobody wakes up every day in La La Land how great everything is.
Yeah.
You have to work at it. It doesn't just get injected into you.
I think just waking up every day is a
Yeah,
gift,
right.
That's a good step.
and
Absolutely.
it possibly being involved in medicine for so long, but I think people just take for granted what a miracle it is to be alive, and they just focus on things that could be better. Well, that's great, and improve them, but be glad, be grateful. We like to start a lot of our meetings with like a gratitude appreciation meditation, just to remind people that there's always something to be grateful for.
Yeah.
You know, anything you can point to is a reason to be grateful. But many people just focus on what's not so good. And I understand it, but it makes things pretty dismal.
Well, we have a phrase that I like to use here called the pity pot. Uh, you know, when you get on the pity pot, most people don't care. You're on that pity pot on your own. So you might as well get off the pity pot and try working on an attitude, as you point out, of gratitude. You do much better in life.
I think so.
Well, I think, with all these things, at first it's hard. And, we always say too, it's work, right? And as Otto said, it's not like you just wake up and you're just, singing and with the bluebirds outside. I mean, I tried. I
The
wish
blue
that,
bird of
I
happiness.
want to
Only
wake
in
up.
a Disney movie.
Right.
There's actually a song.
Yes, it is. But I do think, and this all goes into everything you've been telling us, Dr. Stern, that, once you kind of just adapt this lifestyle, it becomes, your new healthy habits, of writing these things down, and trying to practice these different types of management. And I think it's one of those situations, the more you do it, the easier it is, the more natural it comes, to incorporating that into your lifestyle. So I think that, we always want our listeners to know, obviously, even if you just take one of these little tips and, breaking that into your life, it just see, it doesn't hurt, right? None of these things are hurting you. So you might as well give it a try to see if it works.
I'd like to ask you on the list of questions that was sent to us, you had something on there called unconscious bias training. Could you tell us what that is and what that means?
I did? Oh,
No, I think he's talking about just extra material. These were, yeah, that's,
Oh, that was
well,
another. Sorry.
Yeah.
all I can say about unconscious bias, I do the unconscious bias training for the health system, which has nothing specifically to do with the Katz Institute per se, except that I'm part of the Katz Institute and I do this training. And the health system is very invested in these trainings. I've been doing it for about 10 years now, various versions of it. And I think sometimes it's difficult for people who don't experience being the recipient of bias, unconscious or otherwise, to know how much it impacts stress in people's lives. And that's a whole other topic. When I do my unconscious bias presentation, I do bring this up, but until you can walk in somebody else's shoes, you don't really know what they're experiencing. It's nice to be sympathetic and empathetic, but it's very hard to know something if it's not your lived experience. That's all I'll say about
Yeah, no,
that.
it's
About that.
a
Right.
true thing. Now, on this also, you have something about change management. What is change management?
Well, can I just say something first about relaxation?
Yeah.
Apropos some of the other things we were talking about. Relaxation is an underutilized tool for stressor management. For some people, unless they actually put into their calendars a time for relaxation, it doesn't happen. I'm serious.
Yeah.
So what I tell people to do is they should choose a method, whatever their method is, and schedule it the way they would schedule anything else that's important in your day. I like to tell people to do deep breathing. I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's a wonderful relaxation technique. You inhale through your nose to the count of 4, and then you hold it, 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 hold it to the count of 7, and then you exhale through your mouth, letting all the air out. And this actually evokes a reflex. It's called the
Yeah.
relaxation reflex. You can't resist it. Like you can't resist when I tap your knee with a reflex hammer and your knee goes out. It's the same kind of reflex. It's a relaxation thing. And after you do that, you feel, it's a great thing. If somebody cuts you off in traffic,
Yeah.
you just, or
Yeah,
somebody gets online in the
bad
store and the
shot.
10 items are less and they have 500 items and you want to you just breathe. Some people like progressive muscle relaxation. That's a technique where you contract successive muscle groups. And then you release. You start at your toes and you go through your legs, your abdomen, you work your way up. You get to the upper body, you can raise your shoulders up and down. You extend your arms to the ceiling and push upwards and relax them. You can squeeze your eyes shut and open them, raise your eyebrows as high as you can, etc., etc. It's very nice technique. It's good if you want to fall asleep also. People never make it to their heads when they do this to go to sleep. They make it midway up their body and then they're asleep. Meditation is another wonderful strategy. There's no wrong way to do it. Doesn't have to have anything to do with a religious practice of any kind, which is something I've heard people say to me, which is incorrect. Meditation improves concentration, it improves mental awareness, and it has the side effect of alleviating stress, gives a feeling of calmness. People who are routine meditation practitioners show an increase in the size of the area of the brain associated with emotional regulation, and also reduces the risk of dementia, which I think is a good perk. So meditation is something people should consider. But when you talk about change management, we live in a very fast-paced world. And change is pretty much the only thing we can depend on. So it's really helpful if people can be open to change. So what is effective change management? That means making the effort to ensure that whatever the rate of change is or the volume of change doesn't overwhelm you. I like to say that life is like underwear. Change is good, you know? Um,
I think you just
change.
gave us our golden nugget of
Right.
the day,
Yeah,
Dr.
Well,
well,
it
people
is-
people think that change is bad, and change is not bad. Change allows for growth, and people shouldn't be afraid of change. Doesn't mean you have to change everything all the time, obviously. But it's important to be open to change. And I think people often think that change is something, dramatic and scary and oh no, but it doesn't have to be like that way. And change is good. Change can give us new opportunities and challenges, yes, but opportunities. And I think people should be open to it.
well, I
I
like
also,
to think the
what?
only constant is change.
Well, that's true. The only constant is change. There's nobody whose life is stagnant. It can't be. That is not the nature of living. But there are people who don't deal well with change, and I think that's something they have to work on and look at. Change is good. Change can be very liberating, depending on what the change is. I do want to say something though about technology management, because we mentioned technology before. You know, technology is supposed to serve us. It's not supposed to abuse us. We've always had technology, you know, even before the wheel was invented, there was technology just of a different kind. But now the rate of technological change seems to be accelerating. And all the time it's more and more and more. And we need to keep up. So it's important that we control it rather than it controlling us. So we should keep technology in its place, but don't be ruled by it. And I've actually had people who sleep with their cell phones. They sleep with it. And I said, who do you think is going to call you? Like, you know, the president of the United States is going to call you, you know, the phone can be somewhere else and you'll hear it ringing. You don't have to sleep with it. Technology should not rule us, really.
Guess there's nothing like cuddling with your cell phone.
Yeah, well, I have had people who say, I need to have it. And you say, why? If someone's going to call you, if you put the cell phone under the bed, it's still going to ring. The alarm is going to go off. Why do you need to have it in your hand? And, you know, the light coming out of a cell phone is just as disturbing as any other kind of light. But electronic light is particularly at a certain, you know, nanometer length that's very destructive to sleep. If you play around with computers or cell phones or things before sleep, it can delay sleep for like 3 hours. So you don't want to do that. But there are people who are totally addicted to their phones, and it's not good. Keep it in its place. That's what I want to say about technology.
That has to start out in kindergarten.
Yeah,
It does. My little goddaughter is just, turned one not that long ago. And she could swipe on the iPhone. She knows how to get to, I mean, it is like they're born now, like with their index finger being able to, do all kinds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I have a 9-month-old grandchild, my youngest grandchild, and my daughter does not let the baby go near the cell phone. She likes to put it in front of her so I can see her on the cell phone, but she doesn't know, no, you can't touch it, can't touch. She doesn't want her to be
Yeah.
that invested in it.
Oh, it's true. It's really
But
difficult.
there are a lot of things, strategies that can reduce stress. One of my favorites is laughing, which a lot of people laugh at, but it's not funny. Laughing has the power to improve mood and reduce stress. There was a great article in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 1928 that looked at laughter as an element of preventive medicine. I'm in preventive medicine, so obviously I noticed this, because laughter enhances your intake of oxygen. Think about what you're doing when you're laughing. It stimulates your heart and your lungs and your muscles, and it increases endorphins again. Remember the endorphins? So laughter is great, and laughter cools the stress response. It soothes tension. It stimulates circulation, and also helps it improve the immune system. I have a video that I often show in my stress talks that I give of a baby laughing hysterically. And
Those are
what
the
you
best.
see, what you see, and it's an amazing video. You see this little baby sitting on the couch, and the father is tearing paper in front of the baby's face, tearing paper, and the baby is hysterical. It's a little baby too, a very young baby, laughing hysterically. And then you
I
find
think
out with the
laughing is
back,
contagious.
well,
Like
what the
there were a couple of
backstory
ads on
is that the
TV.
father was tearing up rejection notices from job interviews. So he was very upset. He was depressed, and he's tearing them, and the baby is laughing, and that improved his mood. So
Right. And
even if
they're
you don't know the
contagious.
backstory, it was just amazing. So I always show that baby, and I dare anybody in the audience not to start laughing,
Right.
because you see that pure laughter, and it is contagious. You just laugh and laugh. So I think laughter is good. I also think people have to learn how to say no occasionally. People get overwhelmed because they can't say no, and I'm very guilty of this myself.
Super
So
guilty.
to the pot calling the kettle black, but you have to learn to say no occasionally. That can help you not be overwhelmed, along with trying to be flexible. That's like being open to change, being flexible. Don't be stubborn too often. You could be stubborn a little bit, but not too often. Um, and a really important thing that I like to bring up is avoiding negative people. People who will say things like, "Oh, you look terrible. What's wrong?" That kind of thing is not helpful. You want to surround yourself with people who are upbeat and
Yeah.
fun. Negative thoughts actually cause chemical reactions that can affect us by bringing more stress in. And again, it decreases your immunity. And positive thoughts can actually release certain compounds and neuropeptides that help fight stress. And they may even help prevent serious illnesses.
See,
So
Dr. Stern,
surrounding yourself with people who are going to be positive, you look great today. What's going on? That's much better than around the people who just bring you down.
well, when you get older, sometimes the conversations revolve
Yeah.
around people talking about all their ailments, um, which unfortunately does happen. And you really have to work at trying to turn that around
Yeah.
because
Well, you
most
can you can you can listen
people
to
have
people and talk
something.
about, I really feel for you. It must be really difficult, but you want to make it easier for people, not more difficult.
Yeah.
People who give praise, people who give compliments, have people that surround them, who want to be around them, versus people who like the sky is falling. The people avoid them. They don't want to be around them. And another thing I wanted to just mention about laughter, you mentioned people having ailments. Laughter can ease pain. So laughter sometimes makes it easier for people to cope with pain. So, don't forget
No,
about
laughter is
laughing.
we actually had someone on a few years back who did laughter yoga. She taught
Yeah.
classes,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just such an incredible thing, because obviously, you always hear like the benefits of laughter, and she was just saying that you could like just actually trick your brain
Right.
into
That's
thinking that
exactly
if you
it.
just start laughing. And
Right.
I'm so impressed by that, and that always really stuck with me because
Yeah.
we certainly do a lot of laughing on this show, so I think we at least have that under our
We'll
belt, guys.
try.
Yeah.
Well, in addition to laughing, I think people should not try to be perfect, except maybe in medicine where we have to be perfect. But, someone once said perfection is a roadblock to progress. Um, you know, don't try to be perfect. Almost perfect is good enough. And people should focus on things they can control rather than things they can't control. There's British, I guess he's British born. I don't think he really counts as British, but he's a motivational speaker named Simon Sinek. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he's somebody who promotes getting involved with a cause you can believe in. He said working hard for something you don't care about is called stress, and working hard for something you love is called passion.
No, yeah.
So getting involved with a cause that you believe in can be really helpful, and can be a distractor when there are other things in life that are difficult and stressful for people. So I think if that would be like,
Yeah.
something for people to take away from this, if you get involved with something, um, that could help a lot in terms of stress management.
It's such a perfect, and that's a perfect way to end our segment there, Dr.
Mhm.
Stern. I would like to thank our guest today, Dr. Penny Stern, who is the Chief of Preventive and Lifestyle Medicine at Northwell Health Katz Institute for Women's Health. Thank you so much, Dr. Stern. You gave us a lot of good little tips and tricks to bring into our weekend and start our week fresh next week. We would also like to thank everyone today who joined us. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. Thank you again.